Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. Yes, you heard it here first. We are talking about a really important topic here today. So if you're listening into this podcast today and you have little ones in the car, understand that some of the things that we're going to speak about may be a little bit explicit. Sometimes there might be swearing, and sometimes there might be terms and words that are not yet understood by young ones. So please be wary if you are listening to this in a car full of young children, but teenagers are okay. So here with me today, I have Nisreen. Nisreen was actually a guest on the podcast a couple episodes ago, and she's a parenting coach. She is a primary school teacher, an NLP practitioner, and a certified conscious parenting coach. She's on a mission to help mums all around the world embrace confidence and clarity in their motherhood journey. It is so important to have Nisreen and other coaches and mental health therapists and professionals really highlighting the conscious parenting game. We are seeing a change in depth, change in parenting style, and really change overall in how we deal with significant impacts on our children's lives. How are you, Nisreen?
I'm well. I'm so happy to be here. How are you, Safa?
I'm good. I'm actually really excited, and I'm honored to have you on the podcast again. Thank you so much for actually accepting it on such short notice. Hey,
absolutely. Any opportunity to talk about what I love.
Well, I love that you love that. So I think we're both really passionate about this topic overall. So we're going to just chime in and see how it is. When we're dealing with teenagers, there is a significant change in behavior when it comes around puberty. I don't know if you've observed it, but when we were young girls were reaching puberty at the ages 14 and 15, and now it's as young as 8 and 9. What's your take on that?
It's a huge testimony, I think, to how exposed we are to chemicals and all the additives in our food, in our air, in anything that we breathe and take in. It just goes to show how much more it's enhanced in the artificial side of things. And as a byproduct, our kids are hitting puberty at a much earlier age.
I completely agree. And I think the oversexualization of social media and things that are really oversexualized. Like, I think by accident, I was scrolling on just Facebook and I came across a really explicit ad. I actually used to run ads on Facebook, and they used to deny us selling anything like an MLM or network marketing business, but they somehow, and it's a sponsored ad. And these people, these perpetrators and these people are sexualizing our kids.
Absolutely. It's so scary. I mean, like, even if you just take a walk into Target and have a look at the clothes, like there's more cropped clothes than there is full-size items. And then you'll most likely go into the boys aisle and find a full-length singlet and shorts that are not above the quad, not even the knee. So it's that over-sexualization anywhere you go. And, if you look back in the day, I don't know about you, but I think we're similar ages.
Yeah.
But back in the day, like, the videos for music, it used to be like very subliminal.
Yeah.
Words used to be so indirect. And now it's just like bang in your face. I mean, there's a whole app based around dances, and the dance moves, which is TikTok, and the dance moves are like insane for like a 13-year-old.
It is crazy. And I think this opens up even our boys to pornography, zina, the wandering eye. So setting a strong foundation for this understanding and having these conversations at such a young age, as well as LGBTQ, whatever, the alphabet people. I'm just going to call alphabet people. I don't know how many letters there are anymore, but I think having a safe space very early on is so important because it sets the foundation for an open communication style. So allowing your children to have open discussions about what they have or what they think or what they are observing, and allowing your children to be right and wrong. Gone are the days where children used to watch TV right in front of us. Now they have iPads, they have their watches, they have smartwatches now. They're being oversexualized at school. People are walking around. Like I went summer dress shopping in late October for my daughter, and like the dresses were like half back and the shirts are open stomach. And I was like, what is this? Yeah. I'm like, why? Yeah. You don't expect 8 and 7-year-olds to have this generalized over-sexualization in clothes as a whole. I mean, I have one daughter. You had two daughters?
Yeah.
Yeah, even the toddlers, the toddlers' boys' pants are longer than the girls' toddlers' boy pants. Like, the shorts, the little biker shorts. It's
the biker short. Yeah. It's so scary. And, you mentioned like having the open communication, but I really think that parents need to take a step before the communication and the healthy and the open communication and take it back to just having that level of self-awareness and having and recognizing what is your intention, what is your purpose to the action that you're about to do. Is it to please someone? Is it to feel better about yourself? Is it for self-growth? What is your purpose behind your action? For then having the conversation of, okay, what's a better choice? You know what I mean? And in order for our children to have that level of self-awareness, us as parents need to have that level of awareness at a very early age with our children to then hold the space for that conversation.
Yeah, I completely agree. So how can parents create a safe and open space for discussing puberty with their kids?
Well, no opinion is wrong, for starters, and no opinion is invalid, right? So instead of getting defensive and concerned about what opinion your child holds, it's a matter of getting curious. Okay, why do you think that? What makes you think that? And how did you get to that answer? And this gives you little gates of opportunities to be like, oh, really? Did you really think that? Is that really true? And, as you work in the field of NLP as well, how valid is that?
Yeah.
Where's your evidence for that? So these type of questions are not only useful for adults, but at the very beginning of a child's life, when they are able to challenge their thoughts, when they are able to accept someone to help them along the way, instead of attacking them and saying you're wrong and blame and shame them, this is what open and healthy communication looks like, because then they'll be able to display the skill of accountability. Okay, maybe that choice wasn't so. Maybe I can do something differently. But none of this can be achieved if a parent is down their throat and judging them straight away.
Yeah. I think as well, like, backtracking, just the way puberty was spoken to you or opened up to you in your space, in your childhood. I don't know about you, but my parents didn't teach me anything about puberty. I woke up one day and I had, I got my period one day and I was significantly young, like I was 10 years old. I was like, what is this? And I remember my mum going into a panic. Like she's in overall panic. Like she's panicking. Maybe she didn't expect to have the conversation early. Maybe she just wasn't ready. I don't know. Maybe she was just going through her own mental health battles. I'm not entirely sure. So I know the role playing of education plays a big factor in how we speak about puberty to our children. I think education is key, but I also know awareness and acknowledgement is key when it comes to talking about sexuality, talking about puberty, and also bringing it back to the Islamic practices and values.
And, when you are able to educate your children with the right names for the right purpose, which is all educational, this tabooness that has just a layer that's been added to this can be removed, because you know what? These parts exist, whether us as parents want to acknowledge them or not. And we are much better off in a better place to address their uses at home with them than them learning about it outside the house with other people's layers added on top of it.
Yeah.
Because that's where the curiosity comes.
Correct.
So parents being the origin of information and space and connection and communication is absolutely vital for a child to go through puberty and feel comfortable enough to come and ask you a question that will be detrimental for their future.
Yeah. I think also, just on the tip of that, raising awareness to our boys as mothers as what we go through. Now, I'm not telling them to parentify the kid. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that, for example, if you're teaching your child how to pray, you're teaching them the value of prayer. As you do this, the child's actually going to pick up that there is 1 month out of the month, that you don't pray. And you're going to say, a lot of people are like, I'm sick, I can't pray or whatever. Ramadan's coming up. So that was, and obviously when this episode will air, it will probably be very much Ramadan. So the kids will pay attention to that. But it's not it's not taboo. Let's speak to your boys about what women go through. So, for example, my son, he's 9, he turns 10 in August. He's like, I noticed you don't pray because you're sick, but I thought you only fast. You don't fast because you're sick. So he's catching on. Yeah. And I said to him, hey, Kamal, women go through something called a period where it's very, it's very hard on their body. Now, am I going to go into the depths of what happens? No, he's too young. He will understand when he gets older. And then my daughter's like, what do you mean sick? And I'm like, well, Salam, when women become women, when girls become women, we have something called a period. And it's really, really hard on our bodies. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks us not to pray during that time, as a sense of mercy. And they're getting it, just having that open space for allow them to have that information from you rather than someone else. I think the first time a lot of men learned about period was at school education, I think in year 6.
Yeah. And they would have missed all the goodness from Islam.
Yeah. And then they're like, but my parents didn't tell me about this. My parents told me about something completely different.
Yeah. And you could imagine the shock of their life when they realize they're learning something new for the first time at school and it wasn't from their parents. It's kind of like they betrayed me.
Yeah. It's like a lie. They lied to me.
Yeah.
I thought my parents loved me. So it can become that's the very beginning of the conflict of betrayal and the resentment. As a teenager, it's that miscommunication of a misinformation.
Yeah. And that what's that saying when people say what they don't know won't harm them? It's the exact opposite.
It does harm them because it harms your relationship with them.
Exactly. And it's also, if you flip that and you make the initial interaction of having that conversation with them, you're priming them. You're literally setting the scene for the future conversations to be had because you're holding the space of honesty and transparency. And that's key with a teenager that's going through all these raging hormones, trying to figure themselves out, thinking the world's against them.
Yeah.
And unconsciously be like, hey, my mum's got my back. My dad's got my back. I know if I go to them with this information, they will be honest and upfront with me.
Yes.
Attacking the problem before it actually becomes a problem and addressing it outside the problem space is key. And prevention is always better than cure. We know this with any aspect of life.
100%. But that is ultimately the real cure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, looking at these things in life that culturally would have been taboo or sensitive or hushed or swept under the carpet are actually life shifting and pivotal conversations to have with your children, obviously at an age developmental time, something that makes sense to them, something that they can digest and process and comprehend.
Ultimately, you do believe that the parents should nip it in the butt before it starts?
Well, absolutely. As soon as there's nothing wrong with saying, mummy's got a period, and in a period, my son's I think he's 6. He knows period because I've had the conversation openly around his sister. As with girls talk and boys. The thing is, this boy is going to turn into a man. He's going to have a wife, inshallah, and his wife will be going through the same thing. So imagine the character he would have built over the time through understanding, through empathy, through connection. That's how you build a man.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't have said it better myself because ultimately be like, what is that? Or the first time that they hear, gone are the days where they hear about it until they get married, or if they don't have any sisters at all, you should still have that conversation.
Because even if, in our deen, it's so beautiful, subhanAllah, because in itself, when a woman's on her cycle, she doesn't pray. That's a mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
That also means that us emotionally, on an emotional, energetical level, we are not the same when we're out of a cycle. That means our response, our reactivity, our emotions are at a different level.
Yep.
In turn, would be helpful if the people around us understood us. If we could understand our cycle and how much we could plan around our cycle when we know we're productive, when we know we're in pain, how productive and helpful would it be if the people around us knew how to treat us?
Correct.
Knew when to lift the weight because it was too much for a mother to hold in the house.
Yeah. And maybe women or men listening to this, they can go back into their childhood and they'll be like, oh, that's why my mom was angry that time, or that's why she had a lot on her plate. Women as a whole, we hold a lot of responsibility with the added pressure of our imbalanced hormones.
But then you have some men in this day and age where their mothers hid every pain from them, every struggle, and they thought that their mum was the absolute robot machine that had no emotions, and she just done everything and everything was perfect. And then they go into marriage and have the same expectation of their wife.
Yeah, and they're like, but my mom used to do it, why can't you do it? And then there's like that lack of empathy, and it causes a lot of conflict between the relationship. So like you said, prevention is better than a cure. We're preventing the problem from being an actual problem in that day and age when they get older. And they do get married and they get into their relationships.
And they have these unrealistic expectations, and the whole notion of martyrdom in motherhood exists. I can't have time for myself. I can't do anything for myself. I'm supposed to be a mum. The house has to always be clean. Always have to cook the food. I can't ask for help. All these things that mums struggle with every single day.
Yeah. So we'll jump into the next question. Let's talk about the importance of teaching consent just for a simple hug and boundaries from an early age. So I don't know about you, but when I was younger, I would like, that's your uncle, go give him a hug, or that's your cousin, go give him a hug. And, I wasn't always comfortable for that. What is your view on the importance of just teaching consent for a simple hug and boundaries of the body?
Be as simple or as complex as you want to make it, but at the end of the day, that icky feeling is that icky feeling. And you are invalidating a child's emotions, and you are forcing them to do something that they don't want to do. It's as simple as child not wanting to share their toy with their sibling, and you say, no, you have to share. That's not nice.
Yeah.
It's okay, you don't want to share, but how can we solve the problem? Here's another toy. Find a solution around their emotion or their opinion. That's how far it goes back. You don't want to hug your uncle? That's okay. How about we just send in? How about a wave? How about a high fives? That's okay. You don't feel like hugging, so that's fine. Say good morning, that's okay. Respecting that space that the child asks for from such a young age is key, because if you cross that boundary from when they're young, and God forbid something happens down the future, they'll say, my opinion doesn't count. What I have to say, what my feelings have to say, don't matter.
Yeah.
And that's where you get people pleasing. You get consent out the window. Consent starts at home. You have an opinion, and I'm here to hear it, and I will advocate for you for the rest of my life, even if it doesn't make me feel good.
Yeah.
What consent looks like from a parent's view.
I completely understand. If you teach a child that they have boundaries over their own body, and then they start and they realize that they have to celebrate even if they don't want to, they start having this conflict within themselves. Like, but I really don't want to. Like, why do I have to? Okay, well, my mom told me I have to, or my mom told me that I should, or he wants me to give him a hug, but I don't feel comfortable in front of him and whatnot. And then that people-pleasing behaviors and characteristics then carry out into their adulthood. And then they lack the boundary with their significant other, or they lack the boundary with other people around them, and they have those people-pleasing characteristics, and it's going to cause a big problem because you are not at the fault and affect every single person's feelings. You come first.
Yeah, and that problem arises from the actual parent having a problem with the other person not being okay with getting the hug.
And it goes so far as well. And I mean, okay, let's talk about this now. Let's talk about sexual abuse awareness, because I know everyone's just on a sit at their foot of their seat waiting for us to address it. How do you believe we can equip our children with predator awareness? What is your take on it from your experience and expertise?
Okay, so with the grooming, I would teach my children that open communication first and foremost is key. Right? What has happened in your day? What's new? What's different? Communication is key. And remember we said before, communication was self-awareness. So in order to have communication, a child needs to be aware of what's happening. Right?
Yeah.
So those are two things. The thing would be, how can I word this? Because it's a very heavy topic.
It is a very heavy topic. And I think because of their heaviness, it still has to be said. Like, I have a lot of women who come into my office, and you can imagine, right? A lot of women that were sexually abused when they're younger, it affects them in their parenthood. They have daughters where they get into the same age that it affected them in. So they're unable to they're as a parent stuck in that time frame. So let's say, for example, it happened at 8. They're mentally stuck in that time frame. And they're parenting an 8-year-old, and there's the conflict. There's the resentment. There's the anger. there's the injustice, there's so many different aspects of it, all because of this issue. It is a heavy topic, but just because it's a heavy topic doesn't mean it doesn't happen. It needs to be said, as heavy as it is. When sexual predators seek a child out, they will single the child out and gain their trust. When the child's trust is gained, they will come as a figure of awareness. So if you don't have that open communication, that relationship with your child where they can come to you, even if you might not like the situation or the conversation, they can still come to you. And even if it's not right, they won't get in trouble for it. That's the first thing. If a parent doesn't have that communication with their child won't come to them with these kind of things. They will fear that they've done something wrong and be punished for it. So they're less likely to get the help. That's the first thing. The second thing is a predator doesn't seek out a confident child, a child that is outspoken, a child that is emotionally regulated and knows right from wrong.
Yep. The ones that extra love, that extra touch, that yes, they want someone that's missing in their life. And just to add on what you're saying, what I personally do with my children is I don't put environments where there's an opportunity.
Yes.
Meaning they don't have sleepovers. Meaning they're not left at someone else's house without my presence. And though I am aware that sometimes these things happen while you're even present in the house, I am always close by. And obviously, as they get older, this gets harder. But as they get older, they also become adults. And this comes back to communication and building a confident and resilient child.
Yeah.
But on top of that, also, I always teach my children, and this is also another sense of prevention rather than correction.
Yeah.
It's a bad choice. We all make mistakes. So if you make a bad choice, it doesn't make you a bad person. So don't hold that blame and shame.
Yeah.
Let's fix the problem. And they internalize something. They think, oh, I accepted it, or it's my fault, or I welcomed it. It just adds another layer, and the guilt and the pile up, and they internalize it and they don't let it out and they don't speak about it. They don't get the help they need.
Yep. I agree with you. And I personally, I am the opposite. We allow our children to have sleepovers, but because we've created a safe space, and this is what every parent should do, that there are trusted adults in your family who you can go to if you don't feel comfortable enough to come to the parents. And these trusted adults will come to you and say something to you if there's something of concern. So we actually allow our children to have sleepovers, but there's a difference in it. It's again, okay, where is your private parts? Where are people allowed to touch you? Where are people not allowed to touch you? If something doesn't feel right, if you feel that ick, don't do it. If you don't feel comfortable around someone, stay around next to another person. Don't ever be alone with someone in the room. These are prevention. So you guys, the listeners just got two different contrasts of exploration. I let our children have sleepovers. Now, as they're getting older, I'm kind of obviously decreasing it because it plays with their behavior. And I mean, I miss my kids as well on the weekends, so it's not going to happen. So having that open communication, understanding where is your private part, where people are not allowed to touch you, where is your no-go zone, and your safe circle. So ultimately, these contrast. There's nothing wrong with having sleepovers, and there's nothing wrong with keeping them at home. So having kind of two really great, I'm happy that we spoke about this because I think a lot of people like, no sleepovers, not when I'm not there. But if you don't feel comfortable with enough, then leave it like that. Parent knows best.
So what I wanted to say is something that helped me with teaching my children about consent is just having a blanket rule. Like, it's not your uncle that you can send them to. It's just main period. Like, when my daughter got older, it's you don't need to sit on anyone's lap. You're a big girl now, no one's lap. Not only this person's lap because they're family, this person because they're that person's family, they're our friend. No confusion, just black and white. Teaching that from a young age really helped my daughter distinguish between right from wrong. And when there were events where, she had done something and I could feel like, say she hugged someone and she felt uncomfortable, I would have that conversation. Did you feel something when you hugged that more? And she was like, yeah. I'm like, was that uncomfortable? And she goes, yeah, I didn't like it. I go, the next time you can say hi. You're allowed to say no. You don't have to if you don't want to. And it's better that you don't. And in that really, the belief being, okay, I'm allowed to say no.
That's a really good point. That is a very good point. Being allowed to say no.
And that also happens, it needs to happen at home. When your child says no, it's not, I'm your mom or I'm your dad, you need to listen to me. It's, why not? But you can't do that in a state of being triggered.
Yeah.
Obviously, check in with yourself. Coming up for me, put that on the side, attend to what's happening in front of you, and then come back to what was happening for you.
Yeah. Yes. I think what you said about checking in on how they feel, checking in if they actually felt comfortable doing that. I think this is really setting them up as well for consent in teenagehood as well. So it starts when they're really, really young, and then it continues on with their teenagehood, and then obviously as an adult. But in your experience, what are some warning signs for a child that has been touched inappropriately? For me, it would always be if the child is withdrawn, like out of nowhere. So they usually like spend time with everyone, but they're very withdrawn. The next one would be if there is just anger, like just burst out of nowhere, where the child feels kind of alone. They're basically insinuating it, like no one cares about me, or stuff like that in their language. But ultimately, unless you have the conversation of what's right touch and what's not right touch, the child will actually won't know.
At the end of the day, no touch is right. No one should be touched. Like even it goes as deep as your friend touched you at school. Why? How did you let that happen? What would come out of it? Even in my kids, hands and feet are to yourself. Period. Not when you're fighting, when you're walking around, not when you're having a laugh. You don't need to be hitting each other when you're laughing. It's a matter of safety, but also everything else that comes around with it. Sometimes having a rule is so, it primes the whole situation for you.
Yeah, because it's like just black and white. There's no shades of grey, just black and white.
Room for confusion.
Yeah. I think
yeah. Now when the time comes for hands and feet, when the rule isn't applied and someone does get hurt, I come in, I say, do you see why this rule is so important? No, I told you so, and we look at the board. No, do you see why we have this rule? Because if you were actually listening, this wouldn't have happened.
Yep.
So because I care about you.
Absolutely. So I hope we can close off that part, that very heavy topic that both of us have chimed in with. And ultimately, inshallah, the listeners will really benefit from that little segment in the podcast. What is your significance? How do you explore the significance of mental health awareness when it comes to puberty and adolescence? What is your take on that?
I think my take on that would be the same as what you were just talking about when it comes to investigating when a child's like having outbursts of anger or when they're feeling withdrawn and alone. It's getting curious, opening the space for, hey, I noticed that you're acting a bit differently. What's going on? How's your day been?
Yes.
How's the week coming up? Are you finding school hard? Are you finding are you having any friendship issues? And just getting, like, I always, even in the workshop that I just had, I tell parents, you are an investigator in your child's life, because the truth of the matter is your child might not even know what's going on.
Yeah.
They're having all these feelings, all these at such a high intensity like never before, and they're just trying to ride the wave.
Yeah.
So it's our job to come in and like slide it underneath them and help the wave go smoothly.
Yeah. I like to say to my kids that there's a complexity in the mind. The mind sometimes need help. Just when you've fallen, sometimes you need someone to help you pick up. That's basically what a friend would do, or a therapist would do, or someone that is knowledgeable in that area, a parent would do, or a trusted adult. But the mental health awareness as a whole, I think opening up the space for less stigma and more understanding, like, hey, great job. If your friend goes to therapy and your child's right next to you, it's like, great job, you've gone to therapy, great job. Give her a high five. She's gone to her therapy. Just allowing the space to remove that taboo aspect of it.
Yeah. Even like, when they are feeling sad, right? It's like, okay, you're feeling this now, and this is what has happened has caused you to feel sad. What can we do about it?
Yeah.
Empowering them with, you always have a solution. There's always options. Or it's okay to feel sad. Give some airspace for that sadness and help them label what they're going through.
Yeah.
Help them redirect.
Absolutely.
But no, even anger is not a bad emotion. Anger is just as important as happiness, because anger is telling you that there's been an injustice that has happened. Your body is telling you someone has let you down.
Yeah.
That's happened. That's not a good feeling. That's a message from your body to your brain that something's going on.
Yeah.
Run away from it. That's how disassociation happens.
Yes. Usually trauma happens not because children are dealing with big emotion. It's that they are alone when they're dealing with the big emotions.
And I remember as a teenager how misunderstood I felt.
I felt the same way.
No one understands me, and I just want to do everything, and everyone's stopping me, and no one wants me to be happy. And it's all because my mum said no. Like, what a drama queen.
Yeah. It's easy to say you're a drama queen, but you don't know what you're going into. You're going through school issues, assessments, school life, trying to figure out who you are, what you stand for. I can go on and on and on and on and on.
How would it be just be like, hey, I see you. I get it. It's hard.
Before we let the listeners, go off and explore their own childhood memories and coaching abilities and take this subject where they do, what are your ideas for how a parent can open the space? Give me specific ideas for how they can hold open the space for their young children, their adolescents, and their children just before they get married and, leave the house. What are some ways that they can spend time together and open up that communication platform?
Oh, first of all, transparency. It could be as simple as one-on-one time for starters. It's one-on-one time for this type of personal questions is key. When a child feels seen, they automatically feel like they can open up.
Yeah.
And then this to transparency, like, hey, I remember when I was your age, I really felt like no one got me. And I just want to let you know that I'm here for you, whatever you need.
Yeah.
And then that primes the scene for the conversation that needs to have had.
Yeah, lowering down so that the way they don't see you as a superior, they see you as an equal.
We're never superior to begin with. We are not we're not like superhumans. We once upon a time were their age. And that inner child is still in us.
Absolutely.
To that adult self. Our deen tells us that as well.
Yeah.
But you can't
inner child healing is so important too.
Absolutely. And you can't befriend your teenager from your ego.
Yes.
All the way.
I couldn't have said it for myself. You can't. You're right. You can't, because they're already having an ego problem.
They will smell it.
I'm going to quote you on that. They will smell your ego from a mile away.
Yes, they can be super emotional, but it's because all these new dimensions in their heart and in their mind are making new pathways. And they are so smart. They know how to express it.
Yeah. Any last words to leave our listeners with? Any words of insight, advice, recommendations?
Just if you were to take anything away, and if your child is a teenager and you're stuck in a pickle and you don't recognize them anymore, because I was there once upon a time, I just want you to remember that they are going to make bad choices, but they're not. And to try your best to stay in the present moment and not make predictions based on their mistakes.
Nice. And where would everyone find you?
On Parenting on Purpose on Instagram, or my email, nisreen@parentingonpurpose.com.au.
There you have it, guys. A lot of insight, a lot of challenges, very heavy subject today that we spoke about, but it's definitely needed. And I really appreciate your time. You guys can find Nisreen on Parenting on Purpose on her Instagram, and you guys can email her to work with her personally if you are having anything to do with parenting, conscious parenting, and everything in between. Thank you so much, Nisreen, for your time today. I look forward to collaborating with you again in the future.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Hype Coach podcast. If you did enjoy this podcast episode, please share it on your socials. You can find me on IG, Safa Al Chami, TikTok, The Al Chami Life, and you can book a personal therapy package at my website, www.thehypecoach.com.au. I look forward to working with you. Let's grow.